Thank you very much. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the Minister for the Environment, Heritage and Local Government, Mr. John Gormley TD. Mr. Gormley is also the leader of the Green Party, has been an elected representative since 1991, is a former Lord Mayor of Dublin, and has been engaged in politics for many, many years as an environmental campaigner. So with that, we'll ask the Minister to say a few words. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and let me start by saying a big thank you to University College Cork for the invitation to speak here today. I understand that this is the 7th Annual Law and Environment Conference, and I commend you here in the Faculty of Law for that. Environmental law is a growing body of law. I think, therefore, that you can rest assured that you'll have material for debate and discussion for many more conferences. Most of you here, I think, or many of you at least, are legal practitioners, and you know the law perhaps better than I do. That's your role. It's my responsibility as Minister for the Environment, Heritage and Local Government to legislate, to make law in response to our commitment to sustainable development, including environmental protection. I've added to that body of Irish law since coming to office almost 22 months ago by signing into law nearly 100 statutory instruments. Over half of these relate directly to environmental protection. That growing body of national law is generated in the main from our membership of the European Union since 1973. There are now over 200 pieces of environmental legislation in the European Union, including more than 140 directives, most of which have now been transposed in this country. Much of this EU law is generated in turn by international agreements. I'm told that the first environment-related multilateral treaty dates back to 1868, the revised Convention on Navigation on the Rhine. However, the vast majority of multilateral environmental agreements have been adopted since the Stockholm Conference back in 1972. According to the UN Environment Programme, there are today more than 500 international treaties and other environment-related agreements. 70% of these are regional, including the Aarhus and Espoo conventions. There are currently 45 multilateral environment agreements of global geographical scope, including the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Convention on Biological Diversity. It almost seems as if the more damage that we actually do to the environment, the more that we regulate. And that's a natural and I think an intuitive response. More than that, it's an essential response until we actually get it right, until there is no longer a need to regulate. Unfortunately, I think we're a long way off the mark. For example, in the areas of climate change, waste, environmental liability and planning, I think we need to make much more progress, just to highlight a few. On the question of climate change, and I understand there has been a lot of discussion on this particular issue, and rightly so, because it is the biggest environmental challenge that we face, and indeed the greatest environmental threat, I think, to the welfare of humankind. This threat can only be tackled by coordinated international action, and the European Union provides the optimum opportunity, I think, for member states to advance this agenda. We are doing this internationally through the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. The European Union is leading international efforts to tackle climate change. And this is why I am fully committed to Europe. And this is why I am also supportive of the Lisbon Treaty, which will formally and specifically recognise the threat of climate change. And it was indeed at the behest of this Irish government, with the participation of the Green Party, that this particular clause was included. At the end of 2008, following a long and tough year of negotiation, the European Union agreed the so-called Climate Energy Package. That package was formally adopted at Council on April 6th and is now binding law in the European Union. It's now a matter of transposition and implementation in the respective member states. The package is evidence of the growing body of environmental law. It is also evidence of environmental law evolving to meet needs, to address new challenges and to embrace new scientific and technical information. And I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that we will get an agreement in Copenhagen. I'm very hopeful now with the Obama administration on board, and I was talking to my colleague, the Danish Minister for the Environment there recently, who had been on a visit to the United States, had spoken to members of the Obama administration, that we can get that agreement. And of course, once we get the 20% reduction in CO2 emissions there, we in the European Union will go to a 30% reduction, which is a very ambitious but also very necessary target.